This broadcast of the NLRL Sunday League is brought to you by Malwa Transport, oversized cargo and trucking logistics specialists of Quebec. Visit their website on www.malwa-transport.ca. Good evening, race fans, and welcome back to TRTM for tonight's coverage of Season 5, Round 6 of the NLRL Sunday League, powered by Malwa Transport and live exclusively on TRTN. As always, I'm Regan Clark. You join us here in a very wet and dreary Le Castellet here at the circuit Paul Ricard in France. Founded in 1970 with this particular layout cropping up in 2005, this is 13 turns and 3.586 miles or 5.770 kilometers of FIA Grade 1, home of the former French Grand Prix until 2022 in Formula 1. This particular variant finds itself spared of the Mistral chicane, giving us a very long run of things down the Mistral straight on the exit of the Virage de la Sainte-Baume and on our run down towards the Curb de Sang. Outside of the world of Formula 1, it also sees racing from the European Le Mans Series, the 4 hours of Castellet having ran on the year every year for the last 16 years, coming up on when it started in 2010. The GT World Challenge Europe Series competes at the 3 hours of Paul Ricard here since 2012. And in terms of two-wheeled racing, the FIM Endurance World Championships Bol d'Or, their longest event of the European calendar, kicks off here in Le Castellet and has done so since 1978. Other than that, it's TCR World Tour and TCR Europe that both compete here at the circuit Paul Ricard. A delightfully underrated selection in this calendar, looking into where we find ourselves now firmly into the second half of the season here, after what has been a very surprising ride of things in the last 2 weeks of the NLRL Sunday League. Reeling away from very exciting rounds that happened over in Bathurst and the Hungaroring. You'll find that those rounds are on the older time format. They actually happened in the last 2 weeks. That would have been the 8th. And doing the rough maths there, that would have been the 15th. With today, the 22nd, we're back on to the endurance format. Now, we are dealing with a few technical issues throughout due to SimGrid having a bit of a nightmare in the last 24 hours. And that does mean that for the first time in quite some time, we'll be reporting both categories individually, as opposed to the topic of what has been the overall championship here on the Sunday League. Hopefully that will sort itself out by the time we head to Donington for round 7. But taking a look into the regulations coming into today, we're back on the endurance format for round 6 of the championship, is what that should say there, and it says round 5, so our mistake. But it's 10 minutes of free practice, of which we're in the midst of at the moment, 20 minutes of quali and then 90 minutes of racing. One mandatory pit stop on open fuel with a minimum stop of 3.2 seconds. Taking a look then, after 49 races, saw the return then of Tyler Vermaak to the top step to take his career's 6th win in Season 5, Round 5, and a very controversial ending at the Hungaroring last weekend. As we see there, that's what the chart looks like as we head in to the pivotal race number 50. We're about to celebrate the 50th race of the NLRL Sunday League since its founding way back when. Taking a look at success ballast after round 5, Cas van Veltzen finds himself heaviest in class ahead of Carlos Disch. Bear in mind, for van Veltzen, only up a single kilo now to 15 kilos over 14 in the week before. Tyler Vermaak takes a 5 kilo increase after his win at the Hungaroring, boosting him from 1 kilo to 6. Otherwise, Zolt Beefgartner with 5, Alan Alexander with 4, Kieran Rod with 2, Ian Skeen with 2, and Fake Galaxy with 1. Taking a look then into the Rookies Championship, Kieran Rod now leads up ahead of Ben Meredith with Carlos Disch 3rd, Sam Greaves 4th, and Michael Hunt in 5th. Michael Harris in 6th, with Gio Boris 7th, Fake Galaxy in 8th, Jason Didon in 9th, and Michael Johnson rounds out the top 10 in the Rookies Championship standings. Taking a look then back into the session so far as we get onto the topic of the Pro Championship standings, it's Van Veltzen on your screens at the moment, leading ahead of Milliston, and we'll get on to a very pressing subject regarding Melvin Milliston, 2-time champion in this series in a moment's time. Zolt Beefgartner 3rd, ahead of Brooklyn Donkin in 4th. Ian Skeen rounds out the top 5 with Alan Alexander behind in 6th place. Taking a look behind, we find that of Tyler Vermaak in 7th place, with Sam Angel in 8th. 9th place as it stands for Stefan Nikolai in 9th place, rounding out the top 10 in the pro standings, Kyle Jenkins with 69 points. Now, very important news as we get into this free practice session, as with some of the major changes coming in to this round sees a huge change in the roster. Melvin Milliston has formally withdrawn from Season 5 of the NLRL Sunday League, the 2-time champion, cruising on to what could have been the accolade this season of his 20th career win. has withdrawn from Season 5, citing concerns over the Season 5 success ballast regulations. We also see the return of a familiar face, hopefully into this round. We do actually see him on the entry list at the moment. Martijn van Manen, the first ever Ford driver to win in the Sunday League. Season 1, Round 5, returns to the field for this round of the championship. And in regards to the incidents out of Round 5, Carlos Disch was disqualified from his finishing standings in Round 5 of the championship, with a suspended warning of a potential future race ban if he is to misbehave again today. On board then with Van Velzen up in front of him, Tyler Vermaat, currently fastest in this session. And before we get towards the end of this free practice session, onto the topic of qualifying just around the corner, let's take a quick glance into balance of performance statistics for today. This is coming from pitskill.io, so take this with a grain of salt, but it shows Lexus and Porsche likeliest to see any kind of benefit in today's race. 10 kilos off of the RCF and the 992, 5 kilos away from Ferrari, with a single kilo off for BMW. And for Van Velzen, all that's really going to do is set him back to where he was last week with 14 kilos on. Neutral weight gain or loss from McLaren and Lamborghini. Then into the positives, Mercedes gaining 5, with Nissan gaining 10, Aston Martin gaining 10, Ford once again on the short end of the stick with 22 kilos on. So for Carlos Disch, he is really going to start feeling the weight of that. We see at the moment he is out on track, the 545, making his way down the Mistral Straight. As it stands then, it's Vermaat, from Alexander, from Rod, Van Velzen and Donkin for that top 5. As we just see across the line, there goes Brooklyn Donkin in the number 17 BMW. Behind them, Sam Angel with Aston Martin, Tyler Wolford, sorry, my mistake there, as we have been given a correction on his first name. Tyler Wolford in 7th. We see new driver on the field here, and a driver we've seen in other series before, but making a Sunday League debut here in round 6 of Season 5. Konstantinos Chitos with the number 4 McLaren on his way to the line with the Kafrovic Racing Team. Brand new entry here into the second half of the season. He's across the line, stays 8th place. Nearest to the line then, I think we're about to see here the arrival of the 315, so is Alan Alexander. Things looking rather hopeful here for the Mercedes. He's expressed great interest into this round, taking a look on board with the AMG. The wet weather conditions we find here, dreary as they may be, is really working to be quite a delightful change of pace for the Mercedes team. So Alexander has reported great things on the run in towards it, and you can see it reflected in his performance so far. Second fastest in the session, gunning for a possible front row start come qualifying just around the corner. Things are definitely looking up from here. Of course, we've seen him to excel in wet weather conditions, having took the win last season, the first rookie ever to win outright in wet and wild conditions at the Grand Prix Circuit Kyalami, in the outskirts of Johannesburg, South Africa. You see here in Le Castellet, could we be seeing a possible future Alexander win today? I mean, let's not get ahead of ourselves. It is looking to be, from the current gunning of things, a very capable front row. Could it be a career 7th for Vermaat? Could it be a second in for Alan Alexander? We'll find out later on, come qualifying just around the corner. Wet weather showing no signs of going away. Looks like it could very well stick around all the way into the race itself, which we have 90 minutes worth in the endurance format. We see recently then to second Brooklyn Donkin of Euro Titans Endurance. And due to the technical issues, we weren't able to show you the team's championship, but rest assured, for those possibly concerned with who's leading, you're looking at them. Euro Titans Endurance continues their lead of the team's championship for the run into round 6. We'll have more concise standings, hopefully, by the time we get round to Donington at round 7. Nearest to the line among 2 drivers, the 75. So we see here Richard Betterson to the line with Team FBR up in front of him there across the line just a moment ago. By looks of it, trying to get a glance in as to who that was. I believe that was perhaps... Was that? No, it wasn't Cheetos. It was, as a matter of fact, one of the new drivers on the field. And this is taking a look on board with the number 100 McLaren. This is Mathis Rolt on his rookie season. So we do have some new drivers on this grid as well. Taking a look, currently shy to get out on track with the Porsche of Chris Gedman in the pit lane at the moment, number 79. We also find here a driver who's returned from last season, but on a very limited entry is what slots him into the rookies category. We see the number 198 of Gonalons. Now, I believe we saw him last round in sparing amounts at the Hungaroring, so I hope to see what he can do a little later on. Of course, a lot of eyes are going to be on some of those returning faces. I mean, trying to get a look in here, if we can try and find him. There, Martijn van Manen. It has been a long, long time since we've seen this one on the grid. Season 1, Round 5 is where he saw his only race win in this championship, and was the first ever driver to do so with Ford amidst a very chaotic start to things in our first ever Sunday League race at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So a rather fitting place for Ford to take their first winning accolade in this series. And of course, we've seen the exploits of the VXS Motorsports team, of which Van Manen is now one of the key drivers for in the time since his departure from the Sunday League. Now, when we covered a brief portion of the XCL Pro Series, we got to see his teammate Toby Cyril take a victory in that series. We're on towards qualifying, so getting a look here. 20 minutes of quali underway. At the front of the field, you can already see movement there among them, Cas van Velzen, but out first among the fray, so it appears, is the Ford of Kieran Rod. Now at the forefront of the Rookies Championship, Rod is looking for victory in category this time around, but he has got ample challenge from Carlos Disch. This time around, we see Disch just on his way down through the Verrières, so we'll get a full tour of the track over the course of this session. Going to catch on board then with the leading number 61 Ford. Let's see if we can go and see things through the eyes of Kieran Rod. And after just a little bit of filtering, we now find, having got up and ahead of him down through the Virage de la Hotel and then through the Virage de la Saint-Baume, is now Tyler Vermaak. So let's go and catch on board with the newfound leader of this qualifying charge, on board with, if we can find him here, the number 8. So before we get on to the tour of the track, on board at this time then with Tyler Vermaak in the number 8 5-star esports BMW. Of course, took his career 6th win last weekend, looking to go double trouble here in the second half of Season 5. Taking a look in the qualifying predictions, it tells us a broadly different story, as it's been changeable conditions on the run-in towards qualifying today. Ben Cheeseman was predicted at pole position with Lamborghini, 159.388 ahead of Alexander in second. Sam Angel predicted third with Disch, fourth. Vermaak on your screens at the moment in 6th place. And behind him, Konstantinos Chitos on their debut looks to possibly gear up for 6th place under predictions there, 203.612. Up and ahead of Kyle Jenkins, 7th. And then Sergio Belda, Ivan Sanchez, and JM Quito. The Holkianos Motorsports team makes 8th through 10th in the qualifying predictions taken just earlier on today. With that being said, on board with Tyler Vermaak, as we make our way onto Paul Ricard, out for the Virage du Pont. So staying on board here, this is one of course, several configurations available for the Circuit Paul Ricard. Modularity at the forefront of its design ethic. We see here in this particular version, we'll find the fastest available variant of this circuit, making our way down through the Est de la Verrière, turns 1 and 2. Now, albeit the drivers won't be able to take the corners anywhere near as fast as they would have in dry conditions, they'll have to go to war with what it is they have. Down through the Virage de la Hotel, through to the Virage du Camp. And in the last couple of visits we've had here to the Circuit Paul Ricard, things have been very, very interesting indeed. This is a circuit that, in spite of its rather nefarious nature, not nefarious nature, infamous nature, where we get nefarious from, infamous nature in viewer and driver opinion, it is a track that nonetheless provides some fantastic racing opportunities. Down through the Mistral straight on a run towards the Curb de Sang. Now, we've seen wet racing at Paul Ricard before. It is worth pointing that out. Last time we saw wet racing at Paul Ricard was, I believe, in the HCCL Multiclass Championship, where in which we got to see a fantastic fight in the GT4s as we enter now the Curb de Sang. Very fast right-hander here. And speaking of that fight, it was between Vladislav Mizin and Tom Wells. It was a real David and Goliath fight in the wet conditions here at Paul Ricard a few weeks ago between the Ginetta and the Mercedes. Now totally encapsulated in GT3 racing for this trip into a wet Paul Ricard. This is going to be very, very interesting. We also had the 120-minute race, the first of its variety in the World Series over on Competizione Performance League. If I believe memory serves, that were drier conditions at play than what we saw in HCCL. Out through then the Virage du Pont. The whole of that third sector comprising Le Bousset, the Virage de Bandor, the Curb de Garlaban, and the Virage de la Tour. Across then, the line goes Tyler Vermaak. From behind him, Cas van Velten, 1.113 seconds off. Then Kieran Rod to the line. Then from behind him, Carlos Disch, fastest in the session so far. 2 minutes, 0.027. Then the 315, then the number 6, then the 72, then the 696, and then the 147 among several drivers making their way to the line. We see here Ian Skeen in 6th place, tucks in behind Rod. Just outside of that top 5, but on the 3rd row. Number 17 across the line, Brooklyn Donkin. Now, by looks of it, starting their flying lap, so it appears. The number 719 of Sam Angel was behind them and crossed the line for 7th fastest. From behind, we saw the 663. And taking a look over there to Michael Johnson, that's the start of flying lap. We also see onto the timing charts, by looks of things, there went Tyler Walford, the number 6, now up to 8th. Number 100 of Mathis Rolt, now in 9th place. Number 599 coming to the line, Zolt Beefgarner with TSRC Esports Lexus across the line to 6th fastest there. So displaces Skeen to the 4th row of the grid on his opening flying lap. He's up and ahead of Skeen by just a little under, so it appears there, 140,000. So I think 139 thousandths of a second he's got over Skeen in 6th place. Nearest to the line, the 96, 74 and 91. We can try and locate here. Sam Greaves to the line. Across the line he goes, sadly not to put a time on the chart. So the 91 and the 90, 91 and the 74, I should say, are coming to the line. So Sergio Belda and Ivan Sanchez. Belda 12th. Sanchez across the line. And Sanchez 12th. Now Belda 13th. Number 114 coming to the line. Looking on board with Ben Cheeseman. Lamborghini across the line, but it was invalid or otherwise an outlap on that last run around. Number 8 across the line a moment ago, but Tyler Vermaak couldn't retake that fastest time set by Carlos Disch, still 195 thousandths away from the leading Mustang. Disch looking at a possible clearance of the field here, still at a 2 minutes, 0.027, still ahead of Vermaak. And with Alan Alexander, of course, he spoke greatly of a very positive attitude coming into this race. He's felt very comfy with the Mercedes. That choice to move away from Porsche was definitely a bit of a perplexing one from our point of view. But you can see there is method yet to the madness. He's 3rd fastest in that last lap, just gone up and ahead of his teammate who's recently just jumped up back into that top 5, that being Kieran Rod. Now ahead of Brooklyn Donkin. Sam Angel squeezed out of the top 5 with Aston Martin. Number 663 across the line a moment ago. That was for Michael Johnson. We do see also lapping the track at the moment Martijn van Manen in the 147 with VXS Motorsport. We see sliding his way down to the Virage de la Saint-Baume. So very wiry back end there for the... actually, that wasn't the 147. No, that was, as a matter of fact, up in front. If we look on board with the 696, that was with the near identical car in front of him. That being, taking a quick glance here, Charlie Harker. The reason we got those colours mixed up in a vacuum is because of rather dreary conditions. We can't actually see the reflection of the gold of what is supposed to be the new 5-Star Esports Academy livery. You can see it does bear a striking resemblance to VXS's. In fact, the only thing that has changed between those two is the black stripes are now gold. Very confusing stuff. Looking at the most recent flurry of times, we see Vermaak across the line, but still, by looks of it there, couldn't clear the fastest lap off of Disch. We see among several drivers here, looks to be Matthias Gonalons, and then right behind him, Alan Alexander. Alexander to the line. Now I have to try a little bit harder here to secure away a front row position, as now the bar has been raised. 1:59.890, new fastest time by Carlos Disch. Bear in mind, Disch is going to be somewhat on a revenge drive here. Of course, had last round's results taken away from him after his very controversial ending to round 5 and an incident pertaining to him and the number 5 of Stefan Nicolai. Now is on a bit of a back foot here with only 2 results in and still late into the championship. He still wants the chance, at the very least, to compete for the podium in the rookies. having previously been put in the position to possibly lead. We see, even for him at this time, the wet weather is starting to become a little too much for the 545 to handle. It does leave some concerns then for Ford stability-wise heading into the race today. 90 minutes of racing he'll have to endure if he means to take home his third career victory. Catching on with the 313, we see with Ben Meredith down towards the line here. The 313 from 12th across the line was most recently in 11th. Has just been squeezed out there to 12th by the number 4 Konstantinos Chitos. Now to 10th place with the Kafrovich Racing Team number 4 McLaren. Number 96 nearest the line. We'll try to catch on board here. Sam Greaves with BMW. Can he make his way onto the charts? Not this time around. So still plenty of drivers there. Around 8 in total. Actually 9 in total there when you consider as well Jenkins from the pit lane have yet to find means to put times on the chart. We see the number 8 nearest to the line needs 332 thousandths for the fastest lap across the line. Goes for Mack. And stays in second. Number 3-1, I believe that was, yes, 314, Cas van Veltzen across the line. For Van Veltzen, that recent departure then of Milliston has lifted a great weight upon his shoulders. It's given him now the best running chance to a championship here with only 4 rounds left to go, including this one today. The Dutchman, he could very well become the first Dutch champion in the NLRL Sunday League and the 4th new name on the championship's charter in 5 seasons after Christian LeBay, Jason Bush and Melvin Milliston. It also marks then a very curious note in this series that with the departure of Milliston as the last of the champions on that grid, having taken both Season 3 and 4's championship titles, taking a look just quickly here back through the history of this series, it marks for the first time since Season 1 Round 7 where we have not had any champions on the grid. Of course, with Season 1 Round 8, that was the round that crowned Christian LeBay Season 1's champion at the Nürburgring. So this is a very, very bizarre statistic to consider, that it is well over 4 seasons in the making to bring us back to this point. We see most recently there, back into the pit lane goes Cas van Veltzen. As it stands then 7th place, 8 minutes left to go in this session. We also see Tyler Vermaak in the pit lane. Out on track at the moment, Alan Alexander. Carlos Deesh still in the lead of things. He's back out on track as well. Nearby to the line, the number 61, so Kieran Rodd, who started the session off, currently 2nd for the rookies in terms of grid standing, 4th overall. Down across the line he goes. Bear in mind, needs 217 thousandths over Alexander. Couldn't find it in that last lap. The number 68 has been disqualified. That pertains to Michael Hunt with Team FBR. Disqualified from quali and will start 28th here for round 6 at Paul Ricard. Number 72 coming to the line. Trying to catch them, but I believe we were just a little too late at the time. Charlie Harker across the line, 15th. Nearby to the line, 315. So Alexander still looking for that front row start. Currently on the 2nd row alongside his teammate Kieran Rodd. We'll see here though, for the Mercedes. Down across the line, needs 200 and looking into there, 288 thousandths. Number 67 nearest to the line, so we've got to catch on board here. Gioet Boris. Now, this is a curious case when you consider in the last round he competed, I believe, with Porsche, and we see here for the MSR BMW now is a recent vehicle swap for the number 67. He's across the line most recently then to 19th place ahead of Matthias Roll. In 20th place, he himself tucked up behind Kieran Rodd on our run down through the Virage de Bandor. Number 315 currently on the Mistral. We see here for Alexander what times may possibly exist for him in the near future. We also see it's still close margins for his teammate Kieran Rodd, who's just on his way down through the Virage du Pont. A bit of oversteer for him there. And he comes back into the pit lane for Roll right behind him. He's going to stay out by it appears there. And the number 100 across the line from 20th. And stays there. Number 198, I believe, nearest to the line at this time. That'll be for Matthias Gonalons across the line. 24th, still yet to have put a time on the charts. Then 5.5 minutes left to go in quali, and it has been quite a struggle for quite a few, especially one curious case here for Ben Cheeseman. Now, it is definitely worth pointing out changeable conditions could absolutely be that contributing factor behind how Cheeseman was able to take in qualifying predictions for this round the fastest time with Lamborghini. But as we see it right now, that is a result that has failed to materialize in what is currently 15 minutes of the 20 minutes of qualifying we have here for round 6. Seeing with Van Manen, it's going to be a bit of a rickety restart for him at this time because he's been out of it for a few seasons in the Sunday League. So getting back used to this grid of drivers that we have seen grow and progress over the course of both their own personal careers and their Sunday League careers over the course of what has been nearly 4 seasons since his first ever victory. This is going to be somewhat of a culture shock then for Van Manen, but I'm sure he's up for the task in his time since away with VXS Motorsport. Number 313 nearest the line, it'll be Meredith from 12th. Needed a single 100th over Wolford for 11th place. Couldn't find it in that last lap. Number 599, that being Zolt Beefgartner, comes to the line here with TSRC Esports Lexus. Across the line he goes. Very close margins also to consider there. Around around 51 thousandths between himself and Van Veltsen for 7th place. Number 34 next across the line. And that was a recent leap there. Michael Harris to 16th with Team FBR Lexus. Number 147 coming to the line, so we're going catch back on board with Van Manen. Having cut his teeth in the XCL Pro Series, I'm sure he's up for the challenge, but let's see if he can put a time on the chart first. And across the line he goes. And again, it's been the same story it's been for upwards of 17 minutes here. The 147 in the wet conditions at Le Castellet is struggling to put a time on the chart, or is it perhaps some very, very crude game of sandbagging? Only time will tell. Number 75 nearest to the line. That'll be for Richard Bettison. Team FBR's McLaren also struggling to put times on charts, and we've only about 3 minutes left to go in qualifying. Time's running short. Among the nearest drivers to the line, we see just behind the number 67, the number 61, Kieran Rodd across the line. Still needs 217 thousandths on Alexander for the front of that second row and to get himself a position closer to the leading rookie, the 545 of Carlos Disch, at the forefront of this field. Nearest to the line, number 26 on board then, JM Quito with Holkianos Motorsport. Making his way to the line, number 26 then from 14th on the field. Can he find an improvement? Up and ahead of Meredith and Gedman. Not this time around, stays 14th place in that last lap. We saw momentarily there across the line a moment ago went the number 663. That's Michael Johnson, still yet to have put a time on the chart. It has been a real struggle for quite a few on this grid so far. Taking a look to the line here. Zolt Beefgartner with Lexus. From 8th place, bear in mind, very thin margins there, 51 thousandths between himself and Van Veltsen. Still couldn't find any dice for 7th. 147 nearest. Back on board then. What has been an uphill battle so far for Martijn van Manen. A driver who has his name etched into the history books as the first ever to win with Ford in this series back in Season 1, Round 5 at Indianapolis. Driver with some great credibility behind him in the VXS number 147, making his way to the line on the exit of the Virage du Pont. A minute and a half roughly left to go in this session. Do we see him make his way onto the charts? Across the line he goes, not this time around. So this is his one and only opportunity left now to put his name on that timing chart before the session is out. 198 across the line a moment ago. And for Gonalons, that's 20th. Number 4, number 67 coming to the line. So we see Konstantinos Chitos from 10th place on his first quali here in the Sunday League has done a remarkable job so far. 3rd in the rookies category and 10th outright as he marks the back of the 5th row up and ahead of Tyler Wolford in 11th place. Ben Meredith behind in 12th makes the 6th row, and we can see things are razor thin between the pair, still divided by 100th. Both of them, however, retired to the pit lane. Number 79, I believe that is, coming to the line. So for Chris Gedman on his first quali as well, he's got one more shot at this. Can he get up and ahead of Meredith and closer to his fellow newcomer to the grid, Konstantinos Chitos? Number 315 and 61, by looks of it, were rolling down to the line for but a moment, but both of them hurry to the pit lane before the end of this session. So as it stands then, that's your second row. The 315, Alan Alexander, and the number 61 of Kieran Rod. We'll see if anyone can stand in the way of that nearest to the line here on the Virage DuPont. We see Zolt Beefgartner with Lexus. Try as he may. Can he get ahead of Van Veltzen for 7th in this qualifying session? Across the line he goes and ends things out in 8th. This presents a very curious question here for Martijn van Manen. He has been feverishly searching for that opportunity here to put a time on the chart. We do see that he is, for what it stands at the moment, albeit nearly 6 seconds off of his own personal best, he is still valid on his run down through the Virage de la Tour. Well, the 147, it's now or never. Where does he find himself appearing on the charts? Through the Virage DuPont, down towards the line. Down to the line we go. Van Manen to the line from 24th across the line, makes 19th at the end of this session. A very bizarre end then to qualifying, with plenty of drivers, new and experienced alike, struggling to put times on charts. But at the end of it all, it's Carlos Disch on pole position ahead of Tyler Vermaak in 2nd. Alan Alexander 3rd with Kieran Rod in 4th. We'll get a full look at the grid in just a moment's time. Before we get to that, 2 articles of news. First up, in the world of the IMSA Sports Car Championship, taking a look as Porsche Penske Motorsport wins back-to-back at the Sebring 12-hour. Felipe Nasser makes history in the number 7 Porsche 963, back-to-back victories then in Sebring. And then looking over in the NLS, Max Verstappen's team has been disqualified over tyre sets. Used too many over the original allocation of tyres. Ultimately, his team has been disqualified. The car comprised of Verstappen, Jules Gounon, and Daniel Juncadella. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but I'm probably not. Lost their victory at Saturday's NLS2 Nordschleife race due to this technical infraction. So then, getting a look into the grid. Season 5, Round 6 of the NLRL Sunday League, powered by Malwa Transport and live exclusively on TRTN. Before we get to that grid, just a moment here to take a look one last time at the session regulations. 90 minutes of racing to follow here at the circuit. Paul Ricard with 1 mandatory pit stop on open fuel, 3.2 seconds minimum. So taking a look when the grid forms up, as it stands presently then, 28 cars in all, 14 either side of which for the start of round 6 here in the circuit Paul Ricard, in a very wet and blistery state of conditions here at Le Castellet. The grid is taking its royal time to form up, I will say that much for free, but looking on then, now as the grid forms up, you can see slightly lighter conditions at play here, albeit still wet for the race start. And as it stands right now, it does show at least some signs of drying up ever so slightly at the 10-minute mark, but it will hammer straight back down within the next 30 minutes. Taking a look then with 3 minutes before the formation lap, it's a 5-star 1-2 with Carlos Disch and Tyler Vermaak leading the fray from that front row. Behind them, Alan Alexander and Kieran Rod back up a Euro Titans current second row. And then we see a split on that third row. Brooklyn Donkin 5th and Sam Angel of TSRC Esports in 6th place. Cass van Veltsen in 7th with Zolt Beefgartner in 8th. Ian Skeen in 9th and Konstantinos Chitos on their first quali session in the Sunday League makes 10th for the first race start they have here with the Kafrovich Racing Team. Behind them, Tyler Wolford in 11th place ahead of Ben Meredith in 12th. On his first ever race here, Chris Gedman in 13th place. Up and ahead of JM Keto in 14th, Charlie Harker in 15th, Michael Harris 16th, Ivan Sanchez 17th, and Sergio Belda in 18th. On his return to the series, Martijn van Manen with VXS Motorsport in the 147 car 19th, up and ahead of Gioet Boris to round out the top 20. Behind them, Gonalons, Ralt, Jenkins, Betterson, Johnson, Greaves, Cheeseman, and Michael Hunt after being DSQ'd from quali today for driving in the wrong direction. Taking a look then back through the last couple of race wins this season, you are seeing 2 race winners this season so far on that front row. Vermaak having secured away his career's 6th last weekend at the Hungaroring, and then the week before that, Carlos Dietsch became the first ever Swiss driver to win in this series, going back-to-back for victories in Bathurst amidst possibly the most controversial dual set of rounds in the history of this championship. So a very star-studded front row. And then looking in further behind them, we also have Alan Alexander, the first ever rookie to have won outright, did so last season in South Africa. Presently also behind him then the championship leader for the rookies, Kieran Rodd, in the number 61. So 55 seconds before the start of the formation lap. We'll be getting on board in about 20 of those seconds with Dietsch at the front of the field, Vermaak alongside with Alexander and Rodd trailing on that second row. It does make for a very capable top 4 there. Ford, Mercedes and BMW packed into the first 2 rows. Behind them, we do see as well more presence of BMW, but then the first appearances for Aston Martin on that third row, courtesy of Angel in the 719. On board then with Dietsch, as we'll go peeling away, 2-time race winner in this series so far. Light rain, but the track still wet from qualifying means it's going to be a very slippery start for this grid. 28 cars in all for Season 5, Round 6. We're given the all clear to begin the formation lap process, so leading away will be the 545. We hear him rev up the 5.4 litre engine, hiding under that monstrous bonnet on the 7th generation Ford Mustang. Dietsch peels away then from the field. For 5-Star Esports, so begun in the last couple of weeks their march towards a possible lead of the team's championship, but they've got quite the mountain to climb when you consider it has been a coordinated, almost practically military effort by Euro Titans to secure away the team's championship lead heading into that second half, making them the 3rd team to possibly take a team's championship after Velocity the season before in Season 4, and then looking behind them would have been Malwa Racing back in Season 3, the inception of the team's championship. We now enter this state of almost Cold War between 5-Star and Euro Titans. 2 sides of the same coin here, 2 teams with a lot to prove on this grid. We see that they'll go quite literally head-to-head here on those first 2 rows on the run down through Sector 1 for the first time in just a moment's time as we make our way through the Virage de la Saint-Baume down towards the Mistral Straight. Now, this is going to be an area worth taking a keen interest in, as for both Fords on either side of those first 2 rows, this is their major capitalizing spot, but they are in the presence of almost equal company when it comes to performance in the straightaways. Mercedes are no slouch, but it's BMW to keep a close eye on. If Vermaak can get a good start in that opening sector, if he stays with his teammate, they can start to carve away a leader. It could even be a case that they may find themselves with a bit of infighting over that leading position. Vermaak with a lot to prove upon his return to the 5-Star Esports team up against Carlos Dietsch. Vermaak having crossed the line a few seasons ago on the last round to be crowned a champion, had it taken out of his hands following a post-race investigation. That's what gave Milliston his first championship in this series. But the point to prove on this grid is the seasoned veteran versus the young blood to the series. 5:45 and number 8. Could this be a new rivalry in the brewing here? Unlikely. These two drivers, they're professionals in what they do. I highly, highly doubt they'll be getting properly elbows out with a lot riding on the line here for Carlos Disch. He's not yet, I don't believe, maybe got that chance of the championship overall. Definitely within a stab of it on the rookies if he can continue to nail in good performances. But he is on what is effectively probation of a race ban. He was supposed to be out of round 6, but he's had that verdict suspended on the grounds that he can keep himself out of trouble for this race. That's probably been one of the motivating factors, I should probably suggest, as to why Disch has been on pole position. He wants to be away from everyone else, but it wouldn't hurt to be away from everyone else at the lead of this race, I imagine, is the thinking from the Swiss talent. So then we'll begin the formation process not very long from now. We're on the run out through the Virage de Bendor, through to the Curb de Galaban. 2 Fords on those first 2 rows. That can prove lethal on this track. We'll see exactly what the 545 and the 61 have in store, as they are in the presence of great company here from the 8 and the 315 from BMW and Mercedes. Bear in mind, not only is Disch leading this race down towards the line here, he's also leading the rookies. The second place rookies car on the road behind him, that number 61, the bright blue Mustang of Kieran Rodd. Making our way then down towards the line as we round the Virage du Pont. One from the pit lane then, that being the 96 of Greaves for Season 5, Round 6 of the NLRL Sunday League, powered by Malwa Transport and live exclusively on TRTN. We roll down to the line. 90 minutes lay before us here at the former home of the French Grand Prix in the pouring wet rain. We're green and racing here at Le Castellet. A great start then from that front row. The second row lagging behind just a little bit, gives a possible rise here over to Brooklyn Donkin, over his teammate of Kieran Rodd, heading down through to the Verrières. Great start then from the 545. We see a great start also from the 315, tucking in alongside the number 8 as we see Disch start to take up position ahead of the field. We see trouble out back though. The yellow flag's out almost immediately at the Verrières as we try to piece together what's going on there. A few drivers caught up in a prang, now left out behind the field. The number 79, we see here more trouble from the point of view of Michael Harris down at the Virage de la Hotel, as forced to cut through before the Virage du Camp. More trouble in Sector 1 in wet conditions. The Lexus gets all the way on the outside. We see Martijn van Manen collected in an incident just earlier on. Makes contact there with the McLaren of Matthias Gonalons as we make our way onto the Mistral Straight. Very troubled start here. Looking in with some of the other drivers here, we see Sanchez was one driver collected up in a few of those prangs earlier on. We see here for Ian Skeen hunting down Sam Angel. He's got clear line of sight of the field ahead of him. Cas van Velsen has had an absolute blinder of a start amidst the chaos ensuing on that opening lap. Now having moved up into the top 5, we see in front here of Ian Skeen is Brooklyn Donkin, but now taking back up position of 7th is Sam Angel with Aston Martin. Having fallen all the way down to 9th there behind, you see, is Kieran Rodd, giving us a new look at that top 3 as we take a look around the field. JM Quito and Charlie Harker side by side down through Le Bousset for the first time. Simsport Racer saying your French naming corners is on point. Doubt it. We'll get through it as we get through it. We see here for Harker on the outside down through the Curb de Galaban towards the Virage de la Tour. 72 against 26, that's for 12th place, so it appears on the field. Getting a look back up with the top 10. We see here contact between Skeen and Angel out the Virage du Pont. The Mercedes turned around just as we caught on board. Taking a look on the replay as we take a look up towards that front of the field at the moment. And it's just as we caught on board with the fight there for 7th place. Skeen having got ahead of Angel, then turned around on the exit of the Virage du Pont behind the leading 545 of Carlos Disch. We see here Tyler Vermaak fighting with Alan Alexander. Behind him, Cas van Velsen on a lightning start. Then the Dutchman up to 4th place, having started outside of that top 5. Bear in mind, with the doors kicked open, his chances of a championship have properly begun with the exit of 2-time champ Melvin Milliston. That's not to say he's not already had one of his most proactive starts to a season in the 5 rounds before today. Down the Mistral straight, very close action here. Zolt Beefgartner in the slipstream, now emerges to the side draft as we head down the Mistral straight. The Lexus currently contending then for 4th place, up and alongside Cas van Velzen. It'll be to the inside here for Zolt Beefgartner. Heading down through to the Curve de Saint. They're still side by side. The BMW, will it relinquish on our run through the Curve de Saint? Not by the looks of it. It's actually a switchback in process here by Van Velzen as he leaps now at the inside of Lebusset on the 599 of Beefgartner up in front. We saw was a brief exchange between Alexander and Vermaak, but it's Van Velzen who holds on to position ahead of Beefgartner. Beefgartner strikes back on the run down through to the Virage de Bendor. And with Van Velzen running out wide, that is Zolt Beefgartner up into 4th place. A brilliant exchange between the pair, but I think we're far from over. The 314 still tucks in behind to the top 5 at the moment. Brooklyn Donkin and Kieran Rod right behind him, 6th and 7th. The number 17 and the number 61. Looking up front here, very close battle at hand for 2nd place. Vermaak versus Alexander. Mercedes and BMW as Ford takes centre stage for the lead of this race. It's their European contemporaries to brawl for what's left of that podium. Heading down through the Verrières, we see imminent chance of counter-attack by Cas van Velzen. He's not wasted any time catching back up to Zolt Beefgartner. Carlos Diesch, new fastest lap of this race after lap 2. In the opening 5 minutes, it has been an exhilarating start to things here at the circuit Paul Ricard. We see a possible move planned out there by Charlie Harker. Couldn't find anything of it on the run down through the Virage de la Hotel. Meanwhile, looking up through the order, we see Zolt Beefgartner and Cas van Velzen likely to end up in another prang for position. Right behind them is Donkin and Rod. Up in front, Alexander and Vermaak. We see here side by side, number 17 and number 61. The Ford's got the inside line over the BMW. Brooklyn Donkin giving ample space over to his teammate. He's not looking to collide on the run down through to the Curve de Saint, but he doesn't want to forfeit position so easily to push himself out of that fight for a possible top 5 in this race. Heading down to the Curve de Saint, the number 61 on the inside goes far later onto the brakes. For Kieran Rod, he holds onto it, up into 6th. Looking up in front of them, there's that fight for 4th, but even closer still up in front of them, the fight for 2nd. Taking a look out back here, we see Charlie Harker having moved into 10th place. JM Keto drops to 11th. Michael Harris sizes his chances up the inside there, and the number 34 moving up to 11th over Keto. We do have yellow flags out, so it appears there. Number 79 and number 113 and number 91 all caught up in an incident. We see straddling the sides of the track, the number 79 and the, by looks of it there, the number 91. So Evan Sanchez, Chris Gedman and Kyle Jenkins caught up in an incident down the run to the Curve de Saint. We see, by looks of it there, heavy front-end damages for the Ferrari, and there we have our suspicions confirmed. Very heavy front-end damages for the 113 of Jenkins, and he makes his way through the Virage de Bendor. Looking up back into that top 3. Things still razor thin between Alexander and Vermaak. Behind them, Beefgartner and Van Velzen starts to filter out closer to a 2nd margin, so it could be fighting amongst the teammates not long from now, as Kieran Rod, already having made position up to 6th, could size up a top 5. Provisionally 2nd in category for the rookies. Still going to hold on to the lead of that championship after today, but it's about the satisfaction of a top 5 is what he hunts down here in the early legs of this race. Donkin in behind. Ben Meredith having made his way into the top 10 now. 8th place for the 313 Ferrari. 3rd in category ahead of Tyler Wolford in 9th place with Porsche. And we see once again the Porsche 911 having great hustle in the wet conditions here in the European theatre. We saw brilliant resolve last season in a few different destinations from Porsche when wet weather hit the track. But I think most poignantly was actually outside of Europe. It was over in Africa in the Grand Prix Circuit Kyalami, where we saw that maiden victory for Alan Alexander, now driving for Mercedes in his 2nd season, away from his inaugural rookie season here in the Sunday League back in season 4. As for the scope of things in that fight for 5th, Rod is getting closer. It is worth pointing this out. The 61 is gaining distance on Van Velzen. It's unlikely, though, that Van Velzen will secede position on track. We see here for Sam Angel, who's caught up in that incident earlier with Ian Skeen. Skeen now 12th, Angel 14th, now tucked in behind JM Keto. Yellow flags out for the 68. And that was for Hunt at this time, but he rejoins down through Le Bousset. So, after nearly 10 minutes of racing, it's Deesh from Vermac, Alexander, Beefgartner, and Van Veltzen for the top 5, Rod 6th, and Donkin 7th, Meredith in 8th, Wolford 9th, and Harker rounds out the top 10. Nearby fights to consider: Harris v Skeen, Van Veltzen v Rod, Alexander v Vermac. And moreover as well, Van Veltzen versus Beefgartner. So this man's really caught between a rock and a hard place here. Fighting for 4th, but also fending off 5th. Looking down through the Virage de l'Hotel, we still see part of that fight here. Harris v Skeen, but in further behind them, we see 2 McLarens head-to-head. By looks of it there, that's Cheetos and Gonalons for 15th. We see the 2 McLarens side by side down through the Virage de la Sainte-Baume, so nearly contact between Matthias Gonalons and Konstantinos Cheetos as they make their way onto the Mistral Straight. Number 4 now in the slipstream as it drops down to 16th place. This is all in that contention for 15th at this time. Gonalons up in front, with Cheetos hanging out behind. But as it stands in the slipstream, he's got a very sizable chance to move back up ahead. And that looks to be what's going on in front of us here as we make our way down to the Curve de Sang on the trailing end of the Mistral Straight. Side by side, but it's going to be Gonalons to the inside, Cheetos to the outside, and runs all the way out wide there onto the rumble strips on the exit of the track before we get to Le Bousset. Getting a look in then with the rest of the field for some of the nearby fights. We see Chris Gedman is in the pit lane, having come in very early as it stands. We'll do, by looks of things here, an hour and 20 minutes, but no, retires from the session, so it appears, on exit. Very confusing turn of events there. Sad end for his first race in the season. But no, hang on. No. Don't take our word for gospel. There is Gedman. I think it was a case when he rejoined the session, it was a case where our cameras just cut away from him as he had a bit of a blip. We do have yellow flags out at the moment. This is down through, by looks of it, to the Virage de la Tour. We can't yet see who it's for. I think actually they're up in front. That might as well, that might very well, I think, be for Cheetos. Yes, down to 21st. So it is the yellow flag that was out for Konstantinos Cheetos. The number 4 rejoins the field, so back in the green flag conditions. Let's go and catch on board then with some of the drivers inside of that fight amongst the top 10. We see here Tyler Wolford versus Charlie Harker, and that's soon to be Wolford v Harker v Harris v Skeen as we see those two join up from behind down through 11th and 12th. The 5th and 6th rows looking to go head-to-head in a moment's time. 4 different manufacturers as well: Porsche, Ford, Lexus, and Mercedes on the run down the Mistral. Getting a look in here closer to the top 5, we see, having tucked all the way into the right-hand side by looks of it there, Cas Van Veltzen is seceding position over to Kieran Rod as we make our way up towards the Curve de Sang. As it stands then, moving up and ahead of his teammate, Kieran Rod takes command of the last of the top 5 positions, up and ahead of Cas Van Veltzen. Looking back on board here, Wolford having lost position out to Harker, but he's still very much so in the fight, so let's not count out the Porsche in these considerations. On board with Tyler Wolford in what is currently the fight for 9th. He may very well have to consider his opportunities for a defensive fight of 10th, but never say never on a counter-attack on Harker in front. We do see, though, very presently in his rear-view mirror, Michael Harris of Team FBR, number 34 Lexus, glued to the back end of that number 6 as we make our way through the Virage de la Tour into the Virage du Pont, and we see there the Lexus darting up the inside. Couldn't find anything of it at the entry to the corner. It's contact from behind, hit around there by the 696. Ian Skeen makes contact with Michael Harris on the exit of the Virage du Pont, the same area where Skeen himself was hit by Sam Angel. Taking a look in here, this was from the point of view of Tyler Wolford, whom of which was still on board with in the live footage, now having to scope up his potential fight for 10th place away from Ian Skeen as it was contact in the background. Now weighing up that defensive fight of 10th place. Harker getting more distance as it stands right now as it's Skeen right up to the back end. Do ignore some of the desync there. That's going to sort itself out, so it doesn't look particularly great on our end, but that's when we use the replays. For whatever reason, it continues to do that. a point we've had to prove time and time again till the end of time by the looks of it. We see, though, for Wolford, that Mercedes is on the prowl. Currently tucked under his rear wing, was super close on the run out through the Virage de la Sainte-Baume on his way to the Mistral Straight. Word from the Mistral Straight as well, the 61 appears to be giving quite considerable draft there to Van Velzen, so it could be a bit of teamwork at play from the folks at Euro Titans. Try and boost themselves closer to that top 5 as it stands. We see here for Wolford and Skeen. Skeen ahead now. Down through Le Bousset. We see, though, from Wolford's point of view, he's got a lot of poke at the middle of those corners, so he's still got a chance here to continue to attack the Mercedes car that we know, like the Porsche, is very difficult to set up the right way. So these two drivers will be battling with not only each other and nature itself, they'll be battling with the machines they pilot throughout the next hour and 16 minutes of racing. Looking here with Kieran Rod as he's pressed right to the back of the 599 of Zolt Beefgartner. We are in a three-way split here for 4th place. We'll stay on board with Kieran Rod as things do size up to become a possible fight of 4th place. Lexus and Ford. Two V8 juggernauts head-to-head down through the very air. The Ford's got the better exit by looks of things here. The 599 a bit tail-happy on the exit of Turn 2. We see heading down towards the Virage de la Hotel. A little bit of desync trouble for the pair as they make their way in through Sector 1 proper. The 599 holds ground over the 61. Behind them, the 314 of Cas Van Velzen trying to hurry the pack along here on the run through out the Virage du Camp. Kieran Roddy's got a lot on his plate here, trying to handle his teammate, pressuring him from behind and trying himself to put pressure on the 599 in front. It is not an easy gambit. We see for the BMW is just clinging on to that slipstream from the Ford. He knows he can't beat him in the straightaways. Not without a great deal of help from the slipstream. See, that desync is creating this horrific rubber banding effect. Now, I'm sure the drivers are probably not the ones seeing this, but we are. It does look very, very bizarre indeed. Van Velzen did tuck out to the inside for a moment, but went back in to the racing line. We see behind them a possible fight amongst teammates Duncan and Meredith for 7th place. We see here for Rod in the fight for 4th place. Getting close now to Beefgartner. He's facing a 4-pronged offensive from Euro Titans behind. TSRC Esports breaching the top 5. What has so far in the opening 15 minutes of racing been an ecstatic drive from Beefgartner to challenge what was a very commanding grab of the field by Euro Titans Endurance. TSRC's ace in the hole then, the Lexus. Evidently the kryptonite to an advance by Ford and BMW at this time. That's not stopped them, though, in the hands of 5-Star Esports from leading today's field. So, just quickly cutting away here from our total focus of the fight to get a look around the field as we see down through the Virage du Camp. Again, that difference in line between the 599 and the 61 as we make our way through Sainte-Baume down to the Mistral Straight. Worth pointing out, 9/10 of a second between Diche and Vermac. And was that, hang on, well, that was a disconnect for the 599. We've just noted that there. The 599, was that a disconnect for the Lexus? It so appears, yes, the case. And now, moving up to that fight of 4th place between each other is Van Velzen and Rod. What a horrific way for things to end there for Zolt Beefgartner. He had such promise in this race that his connection has let him down. It's one of the most gut-wrenching parts of sim racing is when the driver's ripped out of the seat like that with elements far out of his control playing their hand. As it stands then in this championship, and so it's been a running thing for at least the last 5 seasons, internet providers give and internet providers take away indiscriminately in this championship. Out through the Virage du Pont. Number 61 then, 4th place Van Veltzen into the top 5. The most recent change on the field. We also see here Charlie Harker having lost position out to Ian Skeen. Skeen now to 8th place, Harker down to 9th. Close fight as well, Tyler Walford to Michael Harris. We see those two on the run down towards the line. Behind them, Sam Angel. And by the looks of it there, that's the Porsche of Chris Gedman. Caught in between Angel and Gonalons in 12th and 13th. Gedman a lap down. Van Veltzen now up and ahead of Rod to 4th place. So his plan to use his teammate for slipstream to get himself up into the top 5 has succeeded, albeit with some slightly different conditions at play. On board with the leading pair, we see here Carlos Deesh and Tyler Vermack. On what could be a fight for the lead, though, as we've seen amongst teammates, is an unlikely statistic to consider. The number 8, holding on for dear life here. Down the Mistral. We see they're running a bit wide on entry to what is effectively the double apex that is Le Busset. Deesh stays in command of this, though, about 0.8 of a second as we get to the Virage de Bendor. Vermack still in pursuit, but I'd say unlikely at this time to consider it a fight for the lead. We see behind a bit of trouble there for Cas Van Veltzen, runs wide at Le Busset. That does not yet, much like the incident we saw there just briefly before, invite in an opportunity from the 61, but this certainly might. On the run through the Virage de Bendor, now the Curb de Gardaban. Behind them, we see a big crunch of cars from the Euro Titans team, tucked in over the back end of Van Veltzen in running order there. Kieran Rodd in the 61, Brooklyn Donkin in the number 17, and Ben Meredith in the 313. Down through to the Virage du Pont then, 4 Euro Titans cars in all. We see here from the point of view of Brooklyn Donkin, clear line of sight on his teammates in front and behind. Cutting away there as we see some trouble for Sam Greaves, number 96, had trouble on the exit of the Virage de Bendor, now through Garlaban into the Virage de la Tour. Team FBR's Michael Hunt in trouble there as he drops down to 21st. Mathis Rolt now up to 20th place. Somehow developed a lisp in that last lap. Looking here with Harris's point of view of things. Team FBR's number 34 Lexus hunting down Charlie Harker. You can hear the monstrous growl of that 5.4 under the bonnet. Not to be confused with the 5.4 in the Mustang ahead. This is some old school V8 technology from the folks at Lexus. Taking a look up into that top 5 at the moment, we see with Alan Alexander, it's lonely on that podium, with Deesh and Vermack likely to continue following close in each other's stead. The two having worked very, very well at the moment to carve away a sizable lead in this race for 5-Star Esports over Euro Titans, are two teams that occupy the entire top 5 as it stands. Alexander, fastest among the Euro Titans cars, has revelled in great performance for Mercedes today. Is looking confident for a podium, and in classification for the pros that would be second, but of course we only count the overall championship. The only reason we're covering pros today as a separate division of that is due to a technical issue with SimGrid that has kept us from being able to accurately report on the findings for the overall championship. It's what's forced us down to division ranks for round 6, with that hopefully to return back to normality, along with the team's championship reportings for round 7 next weekend. Running out wide there from behind Richard Betterson was Ivan Sanchez in 24th. Taking a look at some of the other fights going on here. Mathis Rolt now having dropped back in behind Michael Hunt. Those two fighting for 20th place, McLaren and BMW. We see here from Sam Angel's point of view, Tyler Wolford in front, VEC versus TSRC Esports. Up in front of them, Harker and Harris. It's definitely worth catching back on board with those two, as we do quickly see here. Bit of a spread out amongst the pack of the Euro Titans cars. Now, the race isn't over yet, but that's not stopped these boys from attempting their own parade lap. So you see the 314, the 17, the 61, and the 313. The ride of the Valkyries then, on the run down towards the Curve de Sang. While it certainly looked nice, it didn't really do much to the team's overall performance. We see here, though, Charlie Harker under attack by Michael Harris. The two side by side, as it looks to be a switchback aimed up here by the Lexus. By the looks of it here, Michael Harris teaching the Fords to fear the rising sun. The Lexus up the inside. At Le Bousset up to 9th. Goes the number 34 on the number 72. What are the chances of a fight back here? By the Ford, it's contact between himself and the Lexus. Punted out at the Virage de Bendor. Get a look at this on the replays here. On the exit of Le Bousset, way too hot on the brakes down towards the Virage de Bendor. We see the Lexus on our live footage there being let back in front. But albeit very, very unhappy with how things just unfolded between himself and Charlie Harker in the 72 Mustang. They rejoined the field 9th and 10th, so no real upset to what they were fighting for originally. Looking up front. Tyler Vermack chasing down Carlos Disch. 1.8 seconds roughly between the leading 5-star cars. 5-star Esports as a team has been cursed in this championship for a long, long time. Let's hope today is not one very similar day for them, as they could be looking on the scope here. 30 minutes currently in, still an hour of racing set to follow in about 5 minutes time of a possible 1-2. Van Velsen, 4th place at the moment ahead of Donkin. Rod having fallen down quite a few steps there to 6th as it stands. Was previously, I believe, 5th place, now 6th as he falls in behind his teammate Brooklyn Donkin. Ben Meredith behind Rod at the moment. Those two separate as it stands there by about 0.8 of a second. Down through the Curve de Sang. Taking a look back here, we do see what looks to be the scope of a fight with Mattis Roll and Sam Greaves. Just quickly getting a look in with Greaves. No, not Sam Greaves. It's Mattis Roll and Michael Hunt. My mistake there. And it's not even Mattis Roll. I am actually going crazy. No, Michael Hunt and Konstantinos Chitos. You get two BMWs that look the same and two McLarens that look the same. You put them in a vacuum and then you add a ton of rain. You can see where the confusion comes from. Looking here with Harris v Harker. Harris out in front still as we make our way through the Curve de Galaban. Down towards the Virage de la Tour. Harker running wide, but what could be the method behind the madness here as he aims for a more aggressive exit of the Virage de la Tour? Does that pick up to anything on the exit of Virage du Pont? Not by the looks of things. Still holding on then to 8th place, Michael Harris of Team FBR. Presently then, as it stands, I think on for a rookie's podium if he can catch up to Ben Meredith. We see in the pit lane here, Ian Skeen, number 696 in after 27 minutes of racing. We're going to go and try and catch on board here with the current scope of things between Rod and Meredith. These two about 0.8 of a second away from one another. Part of that 4-car train here from 4th through to 7th for Euro Titans Endurance. Actually, it's a 5-car train. Yes, when you consider up in front, Alan Alexander, but off by quite a fair distance. Behind them, you can see the trailing end of Harris v Harker for 8th. Wolford v Angel, one to consider. On board here with Tyler Wolford, VEC Esports, against Sam Angel with TSRC. The sonorous cry then of that flat 6 engine as it goes north of 7,000, I think say 8,000 RPM nearly there for the Porsche on the run down the Mistral Straight. Through the Curve de Sang. What a soundtrack then by Wolford. We see in the background trouble for Gondelons as he runs wide through the Curve de Sang. Rejoins at Le Bousset. Looking around the field then. Catching in with the most recent updates then of that spread of cars in the top 10 by Euro Titans. Things getting close between Van Velzen and Donkin. Same story for Rod and Meredith as it stands as we get towards the end of the first 30 minutes. It's 5-star leading in a 1-2 formation. We see into the pits comes Cas Van Velzen. A very recent change then for the number 314. Leading the charge then is Deesh away from Vermac with Alexander 3rd, Donkin 4th, Rod 5th, Meredith 6th, Harris 7th, Harker 8th, Van Velzen in the pits, then will drop out of that top 10. Angel moves up to 9th, Wolford to 10th, Gonalons to 11th, Cheeseman as it stands there to 12th, and great hustle, I must add, for the Lamborghini, having not put a time on the charts by the end of that quali session. Gioette Boris will move up to 13th place, Quito 14th, Johnson 15th, Belder 16th, Cheetos 17th, Hunt 18th, so it stands, but of course, from where we're looking, strategy will play a hand by the end of this race. Roll could be 19th, Greaves could be 20th. You see here, Matthias Gonalons making sizable ground on Tyler Wolford for 10th place as it stands. Wolford himself was in that fight previously for 10th before he was promoted a position by that earlier pit stop by Van Velzen. Now rejoining the field outside of that top 15. We'll catch on with him in due course. One of the closer gaps inside of that top 10. We see actually closer to the top 5 is Meredith from Rod. That has come to be somewhat of a trend here when reporting on inner team fights. Doesn't often get anywhere near as squirrely as we see with drivers fighting on a more individual basis. The 313 and the 61 comprising that third row. Looking on board then, catching in with Gonalons v Wolford. Wolford's going to have to try and cover off the inside here down towards the Virage de Bendor. Otherwise, he's left it open for Matthias Gonalons to come sweeping through on the inside. Can he hurry along to carry the momentum here as he's now to the outside? A little bit of a nudge there between the number 6 and the number 198 through Garlaban into the Virage de la Tour. And we do see it is side by side. Another bump as Wolford muscled out, dives for the inside of the Virage DuPont. The Porsche got later onto the brakes, aiming for a switchback goes Gonalons, and Gonalons, by looks of it there, dives to the pit lane. Amidst this flurry of battling with Wolford, into the pits goes Gonalons. You can already see nursing heavy damages before he got into this scrap with the Porsche just now. Off of that first half hour, we're starting to see more and more pit stops coming in. A lot of earlier pit stops than would have expected before. We see Van Velzen and Skeen, two drivers of Euro Titans' current itinerary, having done this very early on in this race. Skeen earlier than Van Velzen. Those two 23rd and 24th on the 12th row of this grid right now. Gonalons, one of the most recent visitors then to the pit lane. Checking in here with Meredith v Rod, if that's what you can call it. Those two look more to be collaborating in the top 5 than anything. It's about the quantity of vehicles you've got inside of that top 10, those pivotal top 10 scoring positions. The Euro Titans, they're aiming to win this as a team, knowing full well with the hands at the wheel, including that of Cas Van Velzen's, they have very sizable chance as it stands to not only take the team's championship, but also could very well take the drivers' championship. With the progress the Dutchman has made over the course of this season has been remarkable. "58 minutes left to go." Taking a look around the field, we see here the leading number 545 hunting down his career third, trying to right the wrongs of his last weekend's performance, having been disqualified at the Hungaroring. Carlos Deesh on the road to redemption then, after what has been a short but albeit very controversial entry to the series earlier on a few weeks back. 545 then in the lead of this race. We'll catch on with him a little later on. Taking a look around the field, Charlie Harker now having lost 1.6 seconds off to Michael Harris. Those two upgraded recently to 6th as Alan Alexander comes into the pit lane. Let's go and catch on board with the Mercedes if we can. Looking in here, we see the 315 currently from the pit lane then. So Alexander in from what was 3rd on the field. Now marks the 3rd Euro Titans driver to have gone in for this earlier pit stop strategy. We'll see if there is method yet to the madness. We see one of the first drivers to have done so was Ian Skeen in the 696 Mercedes, with Cas van Velzen having followed in his wake not long thereafter. Scoping around the field here to see if we can locate some action on track. Donkin and Rod, 0.7 of a second, and we also see Meredith from Rod, 0.7 of a second. So these three drivers divided very close to one another from 3rd through 5th. We'll leave you on board, as a matter of fact, with that of taking a look in here with Cas van Velzen as he carves his way back up through the field. In front of him there, Sam Greaves in the number 96. We'll leave you on board with the BMW as we will return to you in just a moment's time. Or at least we would, unless we stood up and saw there, taken up and around the outside. Attempted there was the move by, I believe that was Greaves, and then contact between the pair. Actually, no, it wasn't a little bit of contact. It was definitely a bump before that point, but then it upset the rear end. So we'll be back to you in a moment. Cutting away then from Van Velzen after being on board with him for some time, having made his way up and around Greaves, albeit with that rather bizarre incident to have pertained down the run through the Virage de l'Hotel. We see the 114 Ben Cheeseman up and alongside, into the wall goes the Lamborghini. A huge hit between himself and Tyler Wolford as we catch the Lambo on the exit of the Mistral Straight. It is bedlam for the 114. Get a look on board here. Limited angle we have of it, but there, believe either the Porsche drifted across the back end of the Lamborghini. It did look to be that case. Cheeseman turned around into the wall. A huge hit for the Lamborghini. We see here on board with Ben Cheeseman as he tries to nurse the car back to good health. It's a fleeting battle for him. You can see quite heavy front end damage. Could this bring him into the pit lane? We see a little bit tail happy on the entry to Le Busset as the rain continues to beat down on the track here. Question is, with a hit that sizable, did he pick up any steering damage as he makes his way to Garlaban? Difficult to measure here. Of course, he is at a constant right turn. Doesn't appear to be inherently the case, but that's just from the angle of the wheel. There could be more going on under the skin than we're aware of. We see out through the Virage du Pont, unsurprisingly so, coming into the pit lane, the 114, after his incident with Tyler Wolford. Just getting a look back onto that replay just quickly here. This was the incident that happened down the back straight on the Curb de Sang. Yeah, the Porsche, I think, drifted in on the rear end and turned him around. That's from what we were able to observe firsthand. We'll wait to see what race control has to say on the matter, but that looked to have been instigated by the number 6, at least from what the cameras were showing us. You see here the number 6, the driver possibly in trouble over that, Tyler Wolford. In the time since, taking a look around the field, it is still a 5-star 1-2 at the front of the field. We see Meredith getting closer to Rod. Those two now scrapping for third. Meredith up the inside as we catch him there on the exit of Le Busset. Up to third goes Ben Meredith. Behind them, Michael Harris and Charlie Harker, as we have seen in the time since into the pit lane, of course, was Alan Alexander, now reunited with his teammate Cass Van Beltzen. The two make their way onto the Mistral, but also having come into the pits not long ago was Brooklyn Donkin, currently 20th on the field. Ben Cheeseman, of course, in as well. Matthias Gonalons into the pit lane not long ago. Also having come in earlier on in this race, Gedman and Jenkins. We see actually behind Gedman, this was for the 26, I believe, there, and the 663. Johnson versus Keto for 10th. Johnson up the inside. Very similar move to what we saw between the 61 and the 313. What's the counter-attack play options here for Keto? Not particularly likely. Very quick onto the defensive. Number 96 in trouble as it's been emergency towed to the pit lane. That's for Greaves in at the pits at the moment. Could that be a possible retirement for the BMW? Currently 21st on that field. Currently checking in with the leading pair. We see in the time since that Tyler Vermack has taken the lead of this race over Carlos Disch, now second place by 952 thousandths. You see the almost immediate rebuttal for position has already begun. So on board with Disch, now in the attacking angle of things, the blue oval against the BMW. On board with Carlos Disch up in front. We saw a bit of trouble out there for Matthias Gonalons. Beamer versus Mustang in what is now very much an engaged fight of the lead. After a surprise turnaround for things to put Vermack in the lead, could he be hunting down his career 7th after victories last weekend at the Hungaroring amidst a controversial end of that race for Carlos Disch? The two look to go head to head now as a lead swap has been found. Number 313 and number 61 super close to one another in the background of it all, and that's for third place between Meredith and Rod. Of course, we saw the move that put Meredith up to third place just a moment ago. Also very close to them is Harris, so there is the considerations of that 3-car split for third place as it stands right now. We'll go to catch on board with them in just a moment's time, taking a look back onto the larger screens here as we cut back in with the 61, the 313 and the 34. These three comprising the last of those top 5 positions, presently all fighting for a position in the last of those top 3 before they come into the pit lane. Now, strategy will play a heavy hand on those 3 in the second half of this race, of which we're coming up on in about 4 minutes time as we see back on with the fight of the lead down through the Virage du Camp. Now just quickly checking back in with the last of those top 5s, on with Michael Harris in his pursuit over Kieran Rodd and Ben Meredith. Rookies from 2nd to 5th as it stands then. With a rough exit of things down through the Virage de la Saint-Baume. It's only slipstream and straight line grit that's going to give the Ford any kind of sizable chance to counter-attack the BMW on the Mistral. This could be enough here for Carlos Disch, as it'll be a very quick cumulative motion that brings him back into the fight of this as he continues to build momentum. You just can't stop what's coming next for the Ford, heading down through the Curb de Sang, holding on for dear life. A bit of a twitch in the middle of that corner for Vermack, keeping things nice and calm from behind. Carlos Disch waiting for his opportunity. Doesn't want too much trouble to fight with his own teammate, but of course would like a career 3rd and to continue to advance his own goals in the Rookies Championship. Presently, he still leads, but it's also in the scope of the overall he'd be looking into by metric of that finishing position. Looking in behind, we see here Rod, Meredith and Harris, all 3 of them having differing lines on the run out through the Curb de Sang. Running out wide, though, Harris into Le Busset. Tucks things back in upon the exit, but drops time away from Rod and Meredith in their fight for 3rd place. We see for Disch and Vermack across the line to start lap 21. Back on board with these two as they make their way to the very air. Back on board with the 545. Turn 1, then turn 2. Bear in mind, all throughout this time, Gonalons has been able to stay up and ahead of these two. Will not long be shown the blue flags the moment he drops in behind. It's also worth pointing out there are some closer fights as well going on around the field. Among them is between Hunt and Belder. Behind them, we have here the fight for 13th. Cheetos versus Alexander. And looking up the inside goes Alan Alexander to take 13th. A little bump and run there between himself and Konstantinos Cheetos. Into the pit lane comes Michael Harris, having dropped away from this previous fight for the podium. Deesh and Vermaak re-enter the Mistral straight, much further away than they were the lap before. Could this be the sign of the times here of another possible Vermaak victory? Let's not call it too soon. We're not even at the halfway. Harris on his way out. Alexander, as it stands then, moving up to 12th. That'll be up even more positions here with Gioet Boris in the pit lane. Alexander going to move up by looks of things here then to 8th place. We'll wait to see an exact metric on that up in front of him. That could actually be the case here for Hunt. We'll wait to see how it all updates. In fact, it's Keto, 8th place. Back on board with the leaders by 45 and number 8 down through the Virage du Pont. Starting the scope of lap 22. We see coming into the pit lane goes Tyler Vermaak. So keeping his current position of the track, then Carlos Deesh retakes the lead. But it could be a battle in the pit lane as we enter the halfway mark. Vermaak having timed that one very close to the session midway. As close as he can get feasibly. Otherwise it would have been about a minute over his current strategy if he didn't come in early. You see for the 313 and the 61, both of them stay out. Meredith and Rod to 2nd and 3rd as it stands here, playing for the long game. Meanwhile, we see here, driver who came into the pits for the Euro Titans lineup earlier on, now hunting down Team FBR's Michael Hunt. Number 68 and the 315 look to go head-to-head here for 9th place on board with Alan Alexander with Mercedes AMG. Sizing things up on the run through the Virage de Bendor. Already trying to put himself at the rear quarter of the number 68 BMW by the time we get to the exit of the Curve de Garlaban. He couldn't find anything of it there. Can he find anything of this? As we see a big twitch over the front end. He leaps for the inside at the Virage de la Tour. Trying to avoid contact with the 68. He's going to have to go the long way around to the Virage du Pont. Michael Hunt trying not to make this too easy for him as he comes into the pit lane. Alexander to 9th. That'll be 8th with Johnson in the pit lane as well. So up through the order goes Alexander. Vermaak having left the pits there. Currently 6th on the field. Not too far away as it stands then between himself and Alan Alexander. One mistake would be all that it's necessary to bring that Mercedes in between the pair of them at the moment, JM Keto. So it appears. 61 and 313 still close to one another, but as we've seen for the longest time, these two don't show many signs of great hostility, so it's unlikely we'll be seeing a great fight between those two. Coming into the pits, oh, that was rough there for Carlos Deesh. It was very quick dive on the brakes. In wet conditions, it's not particularly easy to get the car slowed down on such a short braking zone. Let's hope that's not a penalty for Carlos Deesh, because otherwise that's a complete write-off for another victory here by Tyler Vermaak. But let's see what it's going to look like from the pit lane. We'll see Deesh on his way out. Meredith on his way in. Rod stays out. Sam Angel currently 4th on the field. We'll see what TSRC has planned. With the loss of their 599 car of Zolt Beefgarner, it's up to the 719 now to represent TSRC's efforts in the top 10. He stays out, moves up to 2nd. Wolford follows in his wake there. VEC Esports up to 3rd before strategy in this race. Vermaak not too far away from him. Keto, as it stands, makes his way towards the Virage de la Tour. We do see in the background was some trouble for the 72 Charlie Harker as it stands there, and alongside him was, I believe, yes, the 696 Ian Skeen, previously 11th place in his efforts to pursue Konstantinos Chitos. Both he and, by looks of it there, the 72 of Harker found themselves running into trouble. Carlos Deesh emerges, no penalty. Question is, was it up and ahead of his teammate? By looks of it, no. The number 8 up in the lead now by an even greater margin ahead of the 545. Vermaak's played this as a very logical game so far. Had it on track, then in the pit lane. He's put not a foot wrong so far, so he needs to hold things close in the next 42 minutes if he wants career win number 7. from where he stands in the championship as well. Vermaak is going to start climbing the order rapidly with continuously good results like this. Could very well see him for the first time since season, I believe season 3, where he was properly in the scope of a championship fight. Bear in mind, it's not likely to be with Carlos Dish, considering he's a round down in terms of his overall score and only 2 rounds in outright in this championship, having entered very late into Bathurst. His fight will be much closer to that of Cas van Velsen, currently 8th on the field. And looking at a top 5 by the end of this race. The 2 BMWs could clash heads by the end of this season. It is gearing up to be that way. We see even further complications here for Ian Skeen as he drops now, by the looks of it there, down to 17th place, currently fighting with Michael Johnson in the 663. After even more issues for the 696, we'll be curious to catch up with him after the race and hopefully have a word to you to what happened to him on the run throughout today's race when we go to Donington next weekend. Looking in close gaps here, Harris and Meredith very close to one another. Of course, these two scrapped in the top 5 not long ago. Behind them, Brooklyn Donkin and Charlie Harker. Another nearby gap then, up and ahead, is that between Meredith and Harris once again. 40 minutes left to go then here in Le Castellet. These two getting close to one another. That's the same story for the pair behind them, Donkin and Harker. BMW and Ford. We see here up in front, Lexus and Ferrari. Recently to the pits then, Team FBR's Richard Betterson with McLaren. Into the pits he goes. Still yet to come into the pits then, Konstantinos Chitos with the Kafrovic Racing Team, number 4 McLaren. JM Quito with Holkianos Motorsports. Tyler Wolford with VEC. Sam Angel with TSRC. And as we see there, I was about to say Kieran Rodd with Euro Titans, but as we see it, the 61 is in to the pit lane just at the 39.5-minute mark of this race. We'll see what the calling is here for Angel, and it looks to be the case that Sam Angel is staying out. What's the current call then for Tyler Wolford? VEC Esports is number 6, looks to follow in the wake of the 719 and stays out here with 39 minutes of racing left to go. In terms of things between Vermaak and Dish, we see as we get on to this second half of the race for them proper and the second leg of their major stint to fight for position. It's 6.477 seconds between Dish and Vermaak at the last interval. So it will, by looks of things here, under these calculations, result still in a 5-star 1-2 if they can hold their ground, albeit one that had flipped from the qualifying order, seeing Vermaak to the lead and onto a possible career 7th. Looking in behind, close action to be found here. Recently up to 10th place goes Harris. That'll be up a few more positions with Rod in the pit lane at the moment. Moving up to 9th. And hats off really to Team FBR's Michael Harris. He's put in an absolute shift here today in that Lexus. Not an easy task to go toe-to-toe with modern machines in the elder Lexus in wet conditions, but he has rose to the challenge and in brilliant fashion. Looking in behind, Donkin falls behind Harker to 13th. Looking at a size of counter-attack. Looking in through the Virage du Camp. Couldn't find anything of it there, but it does force Harker out wide. And that's only going to continue to bother him through that first sector as it throws him off what is such a thin line to follow through Sector 1 onto the Mistral. Could give him the chance to hunt him down. Looking here for Vermaak as he tries to get up and around lap traffic. Carlos Dish still about 5 seconds out, but closing rapidly. Checking in, Sam Angel stays out. You see up in front there, the gap between Vermaak and Wolford is dropping at a rapid rate of knots. 1.5 seconds at its last interval. We'll see what the call is here for Wolford, staying out again after that last lap. We'll see after working his way through traffic what impact that's had for Vermaak. The gap between himself and Carlos Diesch has been squashed to only 3.7 seconds. Diesch is on the run here. He is hunting down that race lead, and there is great evidence to suggest he could have a chance of it in the next 36 minutes. The momentum he's carried into this new stint, brand new tyres on the 545, does put him in that chance. Cas van Velsen side by side with JM Quito. Now up and ahead into 6th. Michael Harris still ahead of Ben Meredith. Konstantinos Chitos behind the pair of them. In the number 4, looking down towards the Verrières. Had that moment where he looked up the inside, backed out of it though. We see here for Meredith, looking to try and catch back on board with these two. As you do also see the fight here, just outside of that top 10, Harker versus Donkin, but looking to try and catch on board with Harris v Meredith. 8th place up for grabs. Lexus and Ferrari through the Virage du Camp. Down the Mistral, 0.4 of a second. The Lexus has the straight line speed over the Ferrari. Looking into that top 5, we see Alan Alexander in the top 5 at the moment, soon to be 3rd place once we see the leading pair in. The 719 as it stands of Sam Angel stays out. We just saw from the 74's point of view that was tucked in behind him. Looking to catch on board here just briefly with Tyler Wolford. Number 6 across the line stays out again. What has been multiple laps now on the run, well over the halfway mark. We see here from Ben Meredith's point of view. Presently then in that fight for 8th place, parked on the rear bumper of Harris. Now we're going to bring up the displays to our left-hand side because it is worth pointing out that gap, less than 2 seconds now between Diesch and Vermaak. We will be keeping an eye on that one. Number 4 in trouble. That's for Chitos behind in 10th place. Now trying to work their way through lap traffic. The Porsche in front of them there, I believe to be at this time, that's Gedman. Yes, in the 79. Down to the Verrières. It does kill some of the momentum for that fight of 8th place. Looking briefly on board here, you can see the physical gap at play down to the Mistral straight between Diesch and Vermaak. 1.5 seconds at the last interval. They make their way onto the straights here at Le Castellet. And that gap much closer than previously realised. Half a second here between Harris and Meredith on their way through the Virage de la Hotel to the Virage du Camp. Behind them was some side-by-side action for Harker and Donkin for 10th place. We see Brooklyn Donkin when they emerge to the field. No, I think I know precisely what's happened there. There's been... oh, never mind. I was about to say it took them a little too long to emerge onto the screens. It definitely did give us a nasty fright. Taking a look on board with those two, we see Harker and Donkin emerging onto the Mistral with Donkin out behind Harker. Looking on board with these two here, just catching on with Vermaak v Diesch. Now this is what decides the race lead at the moment, as we still yet to see any word from TSRC or VEC Esports on whether or not they'll be fielding Angel or Wolford to the pit lane. Angel stays out until lap 28. Wolford, with Vermaak parked on his rear bumper, darts to the pit lane, so now gives rise to a fight for 2nd on this field. Will effectively be for the race lead between Vermaak and Diesch, heading down to the Verrières. You see here the trailing end of fighting between Meredith and Harris, still in pursuits as Wolford darts to the pit lane. Let's go and catch on board here with Carlos Diesch at the Verrières, hunting down his teammate. Number 8 drifting over to that right-hand side. These two fighting for 2nd place is officially, well, provisionally, sorry, not officially, for the race lead. Sam Angel still yet to come into the pit, so this isn't officially for that race lead. against our more preemptive wording. We see now in the slipstream there is very little the BMW can do to outgun the Mustang. Heading down the Mistral then in the side draft now on the number 8. It's the 545 in a drag race with his teammate heading down towards the Curb de Sound. Who yields first then? Will it be a case the number 8 tries to look up the inside? It's a suicide run if he does, and he tucks back in behind. So the 545 moves to second. There's a possible chance of counter-attack by Tyler Vermack, but it's unlikely considering these two work towards a common goal for the 5-star Esports team. Down through to Le Busset. Mustang ahead of BMW. Even in spite of the fact these two are teammates, they've kept things very close to one another. And the second half of Le Busset, this is where often incidents can arise. Can't find anything there in his efforts to try and strike back at his teammate. Deesh holds on to second ahead of Vermack. Waiting on word on whether or not the 719 comes into the pit lane, so this could very swiftly upgrade to the race lead. The 719, by looks of it, is staying out, so Sam Angel about 13.5 seconds up the road of these two, still leading for TSRC Aston Martin, as right behind the two 5-star cars go head-to-head for second place. And colour me impressed. I was expecting things to be a lot more on the tame end when it came to the fight between these two. When you consider Carlos Deesh is on what is effectively a penalty probation off of not getting a race ban. And Tyler Vermack, having re-entered the 5-star Esports lineup not long ago, looking to make solid ground with the team. That's not stopped these two from giving us a great little exchange there for that fight of second. Checking on here with Cas van Velzen, who's played things very stealthily over the course of this race. That earlier pit stop strategy is what's given him the current scope of what could very well be 4th place by the end of this race. In the pit lane at the moment, the number 113, Kyle Jenkins, in with Ferrari as it stands. 30 minutes coming up left to go in this race. Sam Angel still leading for TSRC Esports. No current indicator as to whether we'll see the Aston Martin into the pits on this lap. He's kept things out for so long. Could it be the case that this is the lap to mark his pit lane entry? Now that he's done 60 minutes of racing on that opening stint, yet to have come into the pits once. That 719 has been a real trooper over the course of this race. All good things, though, must come to an end. He's got to come into the pits before the end of this race. Otherwise, he'll be facing sizable penalties. Deesh second, Vermack third, Alexander fourth, Van Velzen fifth, Harris sixth. We see here Meredith seventh, Harker eighth, Donkin ninth, Rod 10th. Is it yet Judgment Day for the 719? He's held things out this long. What does he plan to do now? Out through the Virage DuPont, the 719 still out for the run into lap 30. Hats off to him there. Not many drivers would be willing to run that risk, but the Aston Martin is playing for the long game. The Mustang and the BMW seem to inherit those leading positions. In terms of close gaps, we do have some to report on. Gioette Boris from Tyler Wolford, but it looks like a little bit of trouble having stepped into the way in their most recent proceedings for a fight, a possible 13th place. Meredith from Harris, by as it stands there, less than a second. We see, though, with a bit of trouble for the 313 in terms of stability, middle of the corner out through the Virage de la Tour. He is struggling to stay with, so it stands there with the Lexus. And, of course, the elephant in the room was that fight amongst the teammates. 5-star Esports' Carlos Deesh and Tyler Vermack. Worth pointing out, Kieran Rod within a second there of Brooklyn Donkin, his teammate in front in the number 17 BMW. Rocky exit of things out through the very air at the turn 1 and 2 section. Up in front of them, you see just in the foreground was the 72, the Academy car, Charlie Harker with 5-star Esports. If I'm not mistaken there, that is what those colours are designed to resemble. Harker on his way through towards the Virage de la Saint-Baume. Behind him, the two Euro Titans endurance cars, 9th and 10th on this grid. 719 through the Curb de Garlaban. Sam Angel still leading this charge. I'll have to catch on board as and when he comes to the pit lane, because we do see here Gioette Boris has clawed his way back towards Tyler Wolford in the number 6. They make their way out through the very air, and it's a very, very sizable snap of oversteer there for the number 6. We see side by side down through the Versatile Hotel. Meanwhile, we do have confirmation Sam Angel is in to the pit lane. So Carlos Dish moves up to the lead of this race. 27 minutes left to go here in Le Castellet. Vermac having dropped considerable distance now off of Dish since their exchange for what was the provisional race lead. Alan Alexander's going to move to 3rd place. Van Velsen to 4th. Harris, by looks of things here, to a possible top 5. We'll see where that 719 emerges to the field. We see among these close gaps, we see most recently a move by Gioette Boris, as it was a bit of argy-bargy in the opening sector between himself and Tyler Wolford. Now we see JM Quito give it a go from 16th place. Looking at a chance of 15th, up through to the Curb de Sam. BMW, Porsche and McLaren head-to-head then for what is overall that position of 14th place. Locally, we see between Quito and Wolford 15th. No present updates then on the current status of the 113. I think it's likely to assume the case here for Kyle Jenkins that that's his race over today. We see coming back into the pits is Richard Betterson in the number 75. With Team FBR McLaren. Curious turn of events for him there. He's into the pit lane. Doesn't appear to have damage, but curious case nonetheless. The 75 in. Along with the 113. Looking in with those close by gaps still, as we see things have opened up massively in the time since between Wolford and Quito for 15th place. Gioette Boris cementing control of 14th for the time being. As things stand then, 25 minutes of racing left to go. Carlos Dish in the lead, Tyler Vermac in 2nd place with Alan Alexander in 3rd. Cas Van Velsen 4th, Michael Harris with Team FBR in 5th place, Division 2nd for the rookies, Division 3rd rounding out the podium for the rookies, and 6th place on track at the moment is Ben Meredith. Charlie Harker 7th with Kieran Rod in 8th, Brooklyn Donkin 9th, and Sam Angel rounds out the top 10. Konstantinos Chitos, the only driver yet to have come into the pits, currently 11th on the field. That's soon to be 11th for Matthias Gonalons. As it stands though, 12th, Ian Skeen 13th, Gioette Boris 14th, Tyler Wolford in 15th with JM Quito parked on his rear bumper down through the Curb de Sam. Porsche and McLaren possibly head-to-head. We do have trouble for the number 100. Mattis Rolt on the opening straight here. Had some serious trouble. Is actually darting in towards the pit wall. Is he pulling to one side? I think so. I think this could be the end of the race here for Rolt. After a technical disaster, so it appears for the McLaren. Back into the pit lanes for Mattis Holt on his debut. Looking back in, Wolford and Quito 15th and 16th, Johnson 17th, Hunt 18th, Sanchez 19th, Belder in 20th, Cheeseman 21st. Soon to be then 22nd will be Richard Betterson in the number 75. We see alongside him there is the Lexus, I believe that to be at this time. Well, considering he's the only Lexus left on this field, that is Michael Harris. So the two Team FBR cars running side by side on the run down to the Curb de Sam. That does force a bit of a wedge here for the number 313. Didn't want to have that 75 up in front of him through the Curb de Sam. Heading now through Le Bousset. Slides his way out on the run towards the Virage de Bandor. Hunting down a top 5 spot here. Looking to rejoin his comrades in the back of the top 5. With Alexander and Van Velsen 3rd and 4th. Could very well be an ETE 345 to keep themselves with a lively dose of points and still at the lead of the team's championship, but with a recent string of results by 5-Star in the fact that in the last 2 rounds 5-Star Esports has won in both the double races that comprise Bathurst and then the single race thereafter at the Hungaroring. They're on a hot streak that could bring them up in a championship contention, with this being the 3rd in a row if they are to take it today. 22 minutes tells us different. Looking at close gaps, we do see one here. Johnson versus Quito. 663 Porsche hunting down the 26 on the run through the Curve de Saint. Bear in mind, one of Porsche's strong suits, much heavier braking capacity, and we see there utilized by the 663 very late onto the brakes, drops the anchors for the run in through. Le Bousset now holds on to 16th place. Great move there by Johnson. Meredith now losing some steam here in his fight with Harris. 1.2 seconds as they make their way onto the Mistral. Behind them, worth pointing out here, Harker being intercepted by Rod. The two Mustangs look close to go side by side not long from now. He is in interception range. It's also worth pointing out, Harker himself not too far away from the car in front, the 75 Richard Peterson, being intercepted by the rest of the top 10. In the pits goes Quito. The 26 is in. And this marks a very curious entry as well. Of course, the last McLaren to come into the pits was the 75 of Richard Peterson. We see JM Quito into the pit lane. 21 minutes left to go. Doesn't appear to be any damages either for that McLaren, but nonetheless, number 26, JM Quito, into the pit lane. We got word as well, number 100, Mattis Holt, has retired from this race, citing possible technical concerns. Does it look like when we caught on with him down the opening straight, his car veered quite violently back in towards the wall. Now, it could either be his steering system has been destroyed in a incident just prior to us capturing footage for the number 100, or it's a case where his wheel has suffered catastrophic failure and can no longer be used to operate the car effectively. We've seen cases like this before. 1.3 seconds between Meredith and Harris for control of 5th place. We see in the background coming back out onto the track, number 26, JM Quito. But Holkianos Motorsports rejoins his comrades then 18th, 19th and 20th, with Sanchez and Belda ahead. Kieran Rod closing ground then on Charlie Harker. This could be a curious one to watch. Let's go and catch on board then with the Fords, the epicenter of this fight for 7th. Heading into the Curve de Saint, having gained considerable distance then, as we heard from the sound of 8 cylinders in motion. Kieran Rod down the Mistral gained sizable ground on Charlie Harker. These two looking to go head-to-head here for 7th. The 72 defending, the 61 attacking. Down through the Virage de Bendor, we see very close to one another there. Dangerously close to an incident. Better of the two on the exit as we make our way through the Curve de Garlaban, with the 72 now covering off the inside for the run into the Virage de la Tour. Charlie Harker playing defensively. Kieran Rod looking to go the long way around to put himself on the inside at the Virage du Pont. Does he have the space for it? Looking up the inside goes the 61. Does the 72 find room for a counter-attack? Not this time around. And as it stands, coming into the pit lane, Charlie Harker is coming in. Another surprise entry to the pits. Goes the 72, Harker in. Bear in mind, this does seem to be a rampant wave of what I have sizable authority to believe is possible fuel miscalculations by drivers. Of course, it is an uncapped fuel timer. I think a lot of drivers have come in trying to make their stops as short as possible, not realizing they don't have an hour's worth of fuel. Or an hour and a half's worth of fuel, I should say. Cheetos and Gonalons as it stands then. Possibly side by side down to the very air. The number 4 backs out of it. 198 holds on to what is now control of 10th. So for Konstantinos Cheetos, his chances of a top 10 finish have been squandered today, but he does still hold on to a pretty sizable start to his Sunday League career. A baptism by fire here in Le Castellet. Harris and Van Velzen. One to discuss here as actually having recently gone up and ahead on the Mistral. The Lexus ahead of the BMW, but the BMW alongside at the Curve de Sang. Back up into 4th place goes Cas Van Velzen. Michael Harris following in his wake on the run down to Le Busset. This could be one to watch. We saw in previously Harker v Rod. Let's go and catch on board with Rod's teammate then, the 314 of Cas Van Velzen in his recent scrap with Michael Harris. Team FBR really putting some grief here in the top 5 to Euro Titans. Staying on board then with the BMW of Van Velzen. Euro Titans having gone so far, some 5 races, including double races, since their last win outright. And that came from this very driver here, Cas Van Velzen, who collected on his career 4th in Suzuka at the start of the season at round 1. Right now, then, we see for Van Velzen defending away 4th place from Michael Harris, who's putting on an absolutely royal effort so far in the Team FBR number 34 Lexus, looking for it down through to the Virage de la Hotel. Meanwhile, updates from the front, the 545 now considerable distance up the field from Tyler Vermack. 15 minutes left to go. Carlos Disch possibly on the chances here of a career 3rd. We'll see at the checkered flag exactly what the toll of it is. So we're on board still with Van Velzen v Harris. Taking a look then down the Mistral before we've even hit halfway of that straightaway section. The Lexus up and alongside. A bit of a rub there between the 314 and the 34 as they get their elbows out. And this is what led to Cheeseman's incident with Wolford earlier in this race. Drivers getting a little too friendly with the quarters of each other's cars. Van Velzen still looking for means up the inside. He does go for it super late on the brakes. There is a nudge between himself there and Harris as they exit the Virage. Not the Virage, sorry, the Curve de Sang down towards the double apex corner here at Le Busset. Now to the Virage de Bendor. Having slid his way around, hitting some perfect slip angle there. The 314 still holds ground, albeit with a bit of a shoulder check to that 34 on the run down through the Curve de Sang. But as it stands, through Garlaban in towards the Virage de la Tour, Michael Harris could have his way back up the inside. The Lexus does take the opportunity to go side by side with Cas Van Velzen. They bash doors on the run in towards the Virage de Pont. Van Velzen not looking to pick up too sizable a penalty. Rejoins the field, tucks back in behind there, reluctantly down to 5th place. May very well be forced into a vice here, as now he may have to cover off 5th from his teammate, but not too aggressively. That is Ben Meredith right alongside him on his rear quarter, heading down towards the Verrières. He's not pleased with what's gone on there between himself and Harrison. As we see recently, the number 8 is in. So this is now upgraded to a fight for 3rd between Harris and Van Velzen. In the meantime of all of this, as we caught on board, Tyler Vermack is into the pit lane as the most recent driver to be caught out by what I can only seem to understand here as a possible fuel miscalc. We'll take a look with the drivers. It is a very curious state of affairs from the pit lane. Currently no word from any of the drivers. It is a curious case we're seeing unfold here in Le Castellet. Multiple drivers having come in on these spurious pit stops from Vermack. It has possibly killed off his chances of another win today. Of course, reveling in his career 6th last weekend, he rejoins right behind Ian Skeen, now to alongside Ian Skeen, and back up ahead of Ian Skeen, doing the full tour of the 696 there. Getting a full 360-degree view of that AMG as he rejoins the field. Up in the 9th. Skeen stepping out sideways there through the run of the Virage de la Hotel. The Mercedes having some trouble with 13 minutes left to go. As it stands, the rain is stopping in 13 minutes. Not even in 13 minutes, in the next 10 minutes, the rain is stopping. Are we perhaps seeing drivers come to the pit lane then for dry tyres? We've seen multiple drivers come in. It has been a curious case here where we thought was maybe fuel miscalculations. I think there's something to this that we've not been seeing the whole time, and that's been the weather. The rain has gone away or is fading quickly. You can see only little spits of rain compared to the downpour we had at the race start. a little over an hour and 15 minutes ago. Harris is in. Could this be the move then to the dry tyres? 12 minutes left to go. Rain set to stop shortly. As we are now, by looks of things, in greasy conditions. So there may very well be here in the last 12 minutes a mass infill to the pit lane on what we originally thought were fuel stops are now very clearly presenting themselves with Van Velzen up to third place as tyre stops. Greasy conditions mean that the dries are now officially the faster choice of tyre. Deesh is in a catch-22 here. He had the distance over his teammate. The question is, does he come into the pits and possibly lose the race lead to someone willing to stay out longer? In this instance, could very well be the case of Alexander or by this metric Van Velzen. Or does he come in? Does he stay out and possibly risk being intercepted by this new strategy by Vermaak? Decisions then for Carlos Deesh, and we'll see precisely what decision gets made. We see actually recently trouble there for Tyler Wolford. Deesh stays out. Now, if I had to guess, if he was going to try and come into the pit lane, he was going to probably do so on this lap coming here. He wants about 10 minutes of running left on a new set of tyres so he can properly hammer them throughout the rest of this race. I think we're about to see, though, on this strategy, Vermaak is going to rocket his way back up through the rest of the field. Currently 8th. Nearest driver to him, only a few seconds away, just on his way through the curb to Sang. 6.9 seconds to clear between himself and Matthias Gonalons on your screens at the moment. The number 198 in 7th place. Vermaak on a new strategy, also keep an ear to the ground here on any movement out of Team FBR's Michael Harris, also having come into the pit lane. Now, it is worth pointing out a few other drivers did the same. Among them was Richard Peterson. We can't verify, though, if that was for the same reason. We see here Rod and Meredith close to one another. So we had this all wrong. Our apologies. We thought it was fuel stops out of these drivers. It's tyres we're seeing in the latter stage of this race, as we are now in officially dry dominant conditions here in a greasy circuit Paul Ricard, as the weather has subsided in the last 10 minutes of racing. We see here Van Velzen, Meredith and Rod, 3 of the Euro Titans cars that now mark 4 of those top 5 positions. And this is a real gamble they're playing with. As we see now Rod pressed up to the back end of his teammate, looking to possibly go up to 4th. And we see they're side by side now, up and ahead. Both of them looking to slingshot their way up towards Van Velzen in 3rd. Too far away, though, to make 2 positions. Nonetheless, Rod takes at least 1 on the run in towards the curb de Sang, now ahead of his teammate Ben Meredith. We see for Vermaak in a very short time away from the number 8, he's brought what was a 6.9 second gap down to less than 2.8 seconds. As we're about to see, that latest update will show us that case on the run down the Mistral. We see for these 3, hesitant footing from Euro Titans. They know they're in a bit of a vice here between the 2 5-star cars. Deesh stays out in front. If they come in and he stays out, they risk losing the race, possible race win for either Alexander or Van Velzen. Alternatively, they come in and the rest of the field doesn't. They lose sizable position and have to fight tooth and nail for the next 8.5 minutes. I think in this case, they're going to try and stay out and prey upon a hesitance by Carlos Deesh. So it's this that could very well force him into a really, really tough spot for Vermaak. The strategy is certainly there, but when you consider that Gonalons is himself 16 seconds away from Donkin, unless the conditions rapidly shift in the next 8 minutes, this strategy, great as it is, will not be race winning. That could massively shift. Here's the thing, the bit of a ripple effect they have. Euro Titans has enough eggs in this basket to where they could realistically ask at least one of these 4 drivers in that top 5, hey, look, if the 545 comes in, you don't. You stay out. they've really forced 5-star into a catch-22. They're either going to force Deesh to overexert himself on what are waning wet tyres in drying conditions here, as we're now in green conditions. These drivers will be risking overheating their tyres. Alternatively, they're under pressure to possibly come into the pits and could lose significant grounds to Vermac. We are seeing real chestnut checker stuff here between 5-star and Euro Titans amidst very precarious conditions here in Le Castellet. Seeing on board with Deesh, 7 minutes left to go in this race. Feasibly for him, he's in the scope of about 3.5 more laps before the checkered flag. We see behind Deesh is the 114 Lamborghini of Ben Cheeseman. Across the line he goes onto lap 41. Deesh stays out. Alexander second at the moment, Rod third, Van Velsen in fourth, Meredith fifth. You can see all three of these drivers taking things a little bit lighter now as they get into the last 6.5 minutes of racing. They know time is ticking and they know pushing any harder risks disaster here. They've got the distance. They just need to survive. That's easier said than done given their current predicament, especially in the case of Van Velsen, where he came in super early in this race. Those tyres, even if the conditions held up into wets for the rest of this race, are still far older than the rest of that grid. Charlie Harker now fastest in the number 72 as he rockets up past the number 696 of Ian Skeen out through the Curb de Sang. Skeen with front end damage as it stands at the moment. Next in Harker's iron sights, Gioet Boris getting a look with Vermac. He's already up and ahead of Gonalons, put 5.8 seconds over the nose of the 198. Now 2.7 seconds away from Brooklyn Donkin. The question is, towards the front of the field, I just don't see it possible. I think Deesh is just going to have to stay strong here. 5.5 minutes to the line. He has to stay out. If he comes in, he risks losing ground to Euro Titans by nature of them just fielding one driver out of their current 5, trailing him. 4, I should say. Actually, no, hang on. 1, 2, 3, yeah, 5. Knew I had to take a double take of that one, but what we are seeing now, we are in fast conditions, so he is forced to stay on those wets. They will be pulverized by the end of this race. Skeen is in. The 696 comes to a stop, misses his pit box as we catch him there. Harker, having got up and ahead of Gioet Boris, now drops out of the top 10. Harker with the fastest lap in the 72 Academy car of 5-star. Donkin, as it stands, loses position out to Vermac, who's now into that top 6. We see it's 100th of a second to the last interval. The 663 of Johnson had to drive through for track limits. We see here with Meredith and Van Velsen, Vermac is in pursuit, has 16 seconds to clear. We've seen him do some incredible things on these tyres so far. I don't see it impossible he'll be in that top 5 by the end of this race, but it is going to be a wing and a prayer from the distance he has now to find himself back with his teammate at the front of the field. Carlos Deesh is in a very tough spot in his pursuits of a career 3rd. He is having to go the extra mile on already worn out wet tyres on a dry Le Castellet. He must pray the rest of the field drops into the pits behind him and gives up before he does, because he cannot afford now, with the grid still piling for a possible leading position off of him, to come into the pits. Skeen and now both he and Konstantinos Chitos are both in the pit lane. Meredith, as it stands there, half a second out from his teammate, but Van Velsen has some trouble down at the Virage de la Hotel. Has to cut through in sector 1. For the pair of them, Vermac is closing in and closing in fast. Catching on board, if we can then, with the number 8, getting on board with Tyler Vermac. We see the broad difference in performance he has now on those dry tyres in dry conditions. He played the gamble, but has he yet won with it? That's the real question. On board with the number 8 down the Mistral. 3 seconds to close on Meredith to be in the top 5. 3 minutes left to go, so I don't know really if the gamble is going to pay off from the 545. Is hoping to stay out. Now bear in mind, there is still a chance, slim as it may be, for punctures in this game. super rare to see, but when the tyres are being stressed way beyond manufacturer specification, I would not say that on a day like this that it's impossible to see the likes. For one of the very first possible times in the Sunday League, Vermaak looking up the inside. It's contact between himself and the 313. They collide down through the Virage de Bendor. There was never the space, I think, looking into there. Looking from the point of view, there was never the room. I'll be completely honest. Tyre confidence is one thing, but there was just never the space to be had. Now in towards the Virage DuPont, now up and ahead. He has Van Velzen in his sights. 1 second out. Bear in mind for Van Velzen, there is still some risk involved in being outscored by Vermaak. It allows him to climb through the championship charts. And does bring swiftly into question where he stands in the final couple rounds of this championship. Van Velzen looking closest of all to a possible championship. Things could broadly change. We see the 314 squirreling its way out through the very air as the number 8 looks to take helm of 4th place. Van Velzen tries to hold on for dear life here for 4th place, but up the inside of the Virage de la Hotel, forced to cut again the 314 of Van Velzen. He must not try to fly too close to the sun here lest his wings melt up. Like in the story of Icarus, he may very well, if he continues on that track, get a drive-through penalty if he keeps this one up. So he needs to hold things strong now in the top 10, a solid point-scoring position, and call it a day, as he will still hold that lead heading to Donington. Looking at the front of the field here, Carlos Disch only has one more lap to suffer through on those wet tyres. The 545 still in the lead of this, 23 seconds up the road. Alan Alexander looks to be in a comfortable second place spot. Fought through hell and high water in that Mercedes. We'll see how it all unfolds as we get onto that final lap. We see tucked in behind the 545 at the moment. That is the 663, Michael Johnson with Porsche. But Carlos Disch then onto the final lap. One more run around this track and it's all over for him here. And he's on for a career third. Let's see how it all unravels, I should say, here in Le Castellet. Kieran Rodd looks to possibly lose out on the podium. He too must suffer one more go around. Still has his wipers on. With Vermaak on his tail, we see here just descends upon him. That broad difference in tyre performance. He can just walk around the number 61, the number 8, up to third. Alan Alexander forfeits to the pit lane, so it's second now for Vermaak. It's back to third for his teammate Kieran Rodd. Carlos Disch is on the final lap, and as it stands right now, is on his way down through the Virage de la Saint-Baume. Meanwhile, Vermaak's just on the exit of Verrières. This could come down to the wire between the pair. Two different tyres, two of the members of the 5-Star Esports team, the same team, different cars, different tyres, different classification, one winner. And who may it be? Looking on here with Vermaak, he's down in Sector 1 as Disch makes his way up towards Sector 2 and Sector 3. He's on to the run into Sector 3 now as he makes his way to the Curve de Sang. The 545 has played this very close to the chest, but he still has a few more corners. And with the number 8 in hot pursuit, has he got enough of a distance here? By the looks of it, could be likely, but one slip up could tell him different. As for Rodd, he's staying strong to his strategy at the moment. The 61 looking for a podium here. Second in division as well for the rookies. With Van Velzen in, he drops position down to the back of the top 10. We'll see how it all comes to unfold in a moment's time. On the final lap here, on board with the 545, Carlos Disch has had a bit of a rough week in that last week at the Hungaroring. Was the first of a Swiss driver to win in the week before that. But as he rounds the Virage DuPont, getting to the checkered flag, held strong to his strategy, it's a career third for Carlos Disch. He wins in Le Castellet. And as it looks to be the case, the curse that once descended upon 5-Star Esports may very well be lifted on this day here in Le Castellet, France, making his way around the Virage DuPont. Tyler Vermaak to second. It's a 5-star 1-2. They win in the pros, they win in the rookies, they win outright here in France. An impeccable drive by the pair. 545 and 8, a 1-2 finish for 5-star. Rodd cruising to the line here alongside the 696 of Ian Skeen. Skeen 18th, but it's Rodd to the podium. fought things through to the very end here. 4th place for Ben Meredith, the 313 to the line. Takes 4th, having survived ahead of Michael Harris, most recently up and ahead of Charlie Harker. We see the two run down to the line. Harker previously held on to that fastest lap for a moment. He finishes 6th. Great turnaround to things there for the Academy drive. Donkin to the line for 7th. Wolford in 8th. Wolford to the line, nursing front end damage. VEC 8th place at the end of this race. Up and ahead of TSRC Sam Angel, with Aston Martin held out strong over the course of this race. Now we know why he held out for so long. He's in the top 10 with Aston. Alan Alexander, having come into the pits at the very last second, now to 10th. Van Velsen, a very curious end to his race today. As it stands then, loses considerable ground on the point. Now, I don't believe enough to lose the lead of the championship heading into Donington. But for Van Velsen, he's out of that top 10. As it stands for Vermaat, we actually just got an update there from the number 8. He had a puncture earlier on, which stifled his opportunity to continue challenging. Van Velsen to the line, 11th. Gioet Boris in 12th place. Michael Hunt, 13th. And Matthias Gonalons for 14th place. We see there, across the line goes Hunt. And Boris, MSR and FBR across the line. We see coming to the line here, Matthias Gonalons for 14th place. But it's Carlos Disch on his 3rd career win then in 3 weeks here in the Sunday League. He's been in for only 3 rounds. One in the double sprint at Bathurst. Had a very controversial end to things that saw him disqualified in the Hungaroring. Brings it back to retribution then here in Le Castellet. Wins on his 3rd career win in his Sunday League career. Brilliant stuff for Disch. A 1-2 finish for 5-star. Jubilations all round for the team. They've had such trouble in this championship securing dominant results. And this is a much needed breath of fresh air for the team. Taking a look through the last couple of wins, they've really been on a hot streak in the last couple of weeks with Disch double wins, then Vermaak. Now both of these two across the line. They always had one, but never the other. Today, they can have their cake and eat it too. What a drive then today by Carlos Disch. For those of you joining us tomorrow, we get underway with the first round of Season 10 of Fats GT's Championship and our first ever recordings with the group in the start of a wonderful new chapter. So far then, that's the end of Round 6 of Season 5 of the NLRL Sunday League, powered by Malwa Transport and live exclusively on TRTN. Your race winners then in both rookies and overall. Carlos Disch for his career 3rd. Your winning team then, 5-Star Esports for a 1-2 finish. Behind them, Euro Titans for 3 and 4, Team FBR in the top 5. That's all from us here on TRTN. Our next round will take us to Donington Park as we're back onto the medium format on the 29th of March. That's all from us here. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Take care. Good night.